The diplomatic station hummed with quiet efficiency as species from across the galaxy gathered for the annual trade negotiations. Zara adjusted her security uniform, the deep blue fabric complementing her natural iridescent skin that shifted between azure and teal depending on the lighting. As head of security for the neutral station, she took pride in maintaining order among the diverse collection of beings that passed through her domain. Today brought a particular challenge, the arrival of the human delegation. Humans were still relatively new to galactic politics, having achieved faster-than-light travel only decades ago. Their unpredictable nature and emotional volatility made them fascinating to study but difficult to manage from a security perspective. Zara stood at her post near the main docking bay, reviewing the manifest on her datapad. The human delegation consisted of 12 individuals, including their lead negotiator and various support staff. Her job was to conduct the standard security screening, a routine procedure that involved scanning for weapons, contraband, and biological hazards. The airlocks hissed open, and the humans emerged in a group. Zara immediately identified their leader based on the briefing materials, a tall woman with graying hair and an authoritative bearing. But it was the man walking slightly behind her that caught Zara's attention. Marcus Chen Williams stood about 6 feet tall with dark hair and warm brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around him with genuine curiosity rather than the wariness most species displayed when entering alien territory. His diplomatic attire was well-tailored but not ostentatious, and he carried himself with quiet confidence. "Welcome to Harmony Station," Zara announced, her voice carrying the formal tone required for official proceedings. "I am Security Chief Zara Veltar. All diplomatic personnel must submit to standard security screening before proceeding to the residential sectors." The human delegation leader stepped forward. "Of course, Chief Veltar. I am Ambassador Helena Rodriguez. We appreciate your thoroughness in maintaining station security." The screening process began smoothly. Zara's team used a combination of advanced scanners and physical inspection to clear each delegate. The technology could detect everything from microscopic pathogens to quantum-encrypted data storage devices. Most species found the process routine, even boring. When Marcus stepped forward for his screening, Zara activated the scanner herself. She preferred to personally handle the screening of key diplomatic personnel. The energy field enveloped him, and immediately her console began displaying anomalous readings. "Please remain still," she instructed, frowning at the data scrolling across her screen. The scanner was detecting what appeared to be a concealed cylindrical object, approximately 6 inches in length, located in the lower torso region. The density reading suggested it was organic in nature but with an unusual internal structure. Marcus stood patiently, seemingly unaware of the readings his body was generating. His calm demeanor only increased Zara's suspicion. Experienced smugglers often maintain perfect composure during security screenings. "Sir, I need you to empty all pockets and remove any accessories," Zara said, her hand instinctively moving to her sidearm. "Of course," Marcus replied, producing his communication device, identification chip, and a few personal items. He placed them in the provided container with practiced efficiency. The scanner continued to show the anomalous reading. Whatever he was concealing, it wasn't in his pockets. "I'm detecting a concealed object," Zara announced, her voice taking on a harder edge. "Please explain what you're carrying." Marcus looked genuinely confused. "I'm not carrying anything beyond what I've already shown you." Ambassador Rodriguez stepped closer, concern evident in her expression. "Is there a problem, Chief Veltar? Your cultural attaché is concealing what appears to be a weapon or device," Zara replied, studying Marcus's face for any sign of deception. His confusion seemed genuine, but she'd encountered skilled actors before. "I assure you, I'm not concealing anything," Marcus said, spreading his hands wide. "Perhaps there's a malfunction in your scanner." Zara's security training kicked in. Humans were known for their deceptive capabilities. It was one of the traits that made them formidable in negotiations. She couldn't risk allowing a potential weapon into the diplomatic sectors. "I'm going to need to conduct a physical search," she announced. The other humans exchanged glances, and Ambassador Rodriguez stepped forward. Chief Veltar, perhaps we could discuss this privately. Human anatomy might present some unique characteristics that your scanners aren't calibrated for. Ma'am, I cannot make exceptions for any species, Zara replied firmly. Station security protocols must be followed. Marcus sighed, running a hand through his hair. Ambassador, it's fine. I understand she's doing her job. He looked at Zara with an expression that seemed almost apologetic. Chief Veltar, I think there might be a cultural misunderstanding here. Humans have certain anatomical features that might appear unusual to your scanners. Zara's eyes narrowed. Are you claiming to have cybernetic implants? Those would have been declared in your medical records. No, not implants, Marcus said, his cheeks flushing slightly. Just natural human anatomy. Something that all human males possess. The way he emphasized human males made Zara pause. She was familiar with the basic biology of most galactic species, but humans were still relatively new to the diplomatic scene. Their physiology wasn't as well documented as other species. I'm going to need you to explain exactly what you're referring to, Zara said, her security training warring with growing curiosity. Marcus glanced around at the other delegates, clearly uncomfortable with the public nature of the conversation. Could we perhaps discuss this privately? I'd be happy to explain, but it's somewhat personal. Zara considered this. Her instincts told her that Marcus wasn't a threat, but her duty required thoroughness. Very well. Security Booth 3. You'll be accompanied by a medical scanner and a witness. As they moved to the private screening area, Zara found herself oddly nervous. In her 10 years of security work, she'd encountered countless species with unusual biology, but something about Marcus's demeanor suggested this would be different. The security booth was a small, sterile room equipped with advanced scanning equipment and privacy screens. Zara activated the medical scanner, which would provide detailed biological readings without the invasive physical search she'd initially threatened. Now, she said, trying to maintain her professional composure, explain what my scanner is detecting. Marcus took a deep breath, still looking embarrassed. Human males have a reproductive organ that's externally located. It's completely natural, not a weapon or device, but I can understand how it might appear unusual to species that don't share similar anatomy. Zara stared at him, processing this information. Externally located? Yes. It's necessary for human reproduction. The organ becomes enlarged when. He paused, clearly struggling with how much detail to provide, when males are aroused or in certain physical states. The medical scanner confirmed his words, providing detailed biological readings that clearly indicated natural organic tissue rather than any artificial device. Zara studied the data, fascination replacing suspicion. This is completely natural, she asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her embarrassment. Completely natural, Marcus confirmed. I realize it might seem strange to other species. We've encountered some interesting reactions during first contact situations. Zara found herself studying Marcus with new interest. The confident diplomat suddenly seemed almost vulnerable, standing there explaining intimate details of his species' biology to a virtual stranger. There was something endearing about his discomfort, especially given how gracefully he was handling what had to be a mortifying situation. I apologize for the misunderstanding, she said, deactivating the scanners. Your species' biology wasn't thoroughly covered in our xenobiology database. No apology necessary, Marcus replied, his relief evident. You were doing your job. I'd rather have thorough security than lax protocols. As they left the screening booth, Zara found herself walking closer to Marcus than strictly necessary. There was something about his calm acceptance of her suspicions, his patient explanation, and his obvious intelligence that appealed to her. If you don't mind me asking, she said as they rejoined the main group, are there other aspects of human biology that might be misunderstood by other species? Marcus smiled, and Zara noticed how the expression transformed his entire face. Quite a few, actually. Humans are apparently rather unique in several ways. I'd be interested to learn more, Zara said, surprising herself with her directness. Perhaps we could continue this conversation over dinner. I could share some insights about station protocols, and you could educate me about human customs. The invitation hung in the air between them, and Zara realized she was holding her breath waiting for his response. I'd like that very much, Marcus said, his smile widening. I have a feeling there's a lot we could learn from each other. As the human delegation was cleared through security and escorted to their quarters, Zara found herself looking forward to the evening with an anticipation she hadn't felt in years. What had started as a routine security screening had become something entirely unexpected. Little did she know that this chance encounter would lead to discoveries far more profound than simple anatomical differences, discoveries about connection, attraction, and the unexpected treasures that could be found when two species took the time to truly understand each other. The bioluminescent coral gardens of Aquatica Prime stretched endlessly beneath the ocean's surface, their ethereal glow creating patterns of light that danced through the crystal-clear water. Naya glided effortlessly through her natural element, her translucent skin allowing the gentle phosphorescence to shine through her body like living starlight. As the station's lead marine biologist, she had spent the last 3 years cataloging the unique ecosystem of this water world, but today brought an unprecedented opportunity. The joint research initiative between the Aquarian Institute and the Human Maritime Research Council represented the first major collaboration between their species. Naya had studied the preliminary data about human underwater capabilities with fascination. Their species had evolved on a world that was 70% ocean, yet they were primarily land-dwelling creatures who required artificial assistance to survive in aquatic environments. She surfaced in the main research bay of the underwater facility, her gills automatically adjusting to process the oxygen-rich water the humans required in their breathing apparatus. The station had been specially modified to accommodate both species, with sections that could be drained for human comfort and others that remained fully aquatic for the Aquarians. Naya. A voice called from the observation deck above the moon pool. She looked up to see her research partner emerging from the equipment bay, and her breath caught, a distinctly human expression she'd learned from studying their cultural databases. Ryan Mitchell stood at the edge of the platform, adjusting his diving gear with practiced efficiency. Even through the distortion of the water's surface, Naya could see the lean lines of his athletic build, honed by years of maritime research on Earth's oceans. His dark hair was already damp from the humid environment, and his gray eyes held an intensity that spoke of genuine passion for his work. Ready for the deep survey? He asked, pulling on his fins with movements that seemed almost ritualistic. Naya surfaced completely, her naturally buoyant form floating effortlessly as she studied her research partner. In the 3 days since his arrival, she'd been struck by his dedication to understanding not just the marine life of Aquatica, but also the methods and perspectives of Aquarian research. Unlike many off-world scientists, he seemed genuinely interested in learning from her rather than simply imposing his own species approaches. I've prepared the specimen collection arrays, she replied, her voice carrying easily through both air and water thanks to her dual respiratory system. The deep thermal vents we're surveying today have shown some unusual electromagnetic signatures. I believe we may discover new chemosynthetic life forms. Ryan's face lit up with enthusiasm, and Naya found herself appreciating the way human emotions played so openly across their features. Aquarians experienced deep feelings, but their translucent skin and fluid movements expressed emotion in subtle ways that other species often missed. Human expressiveness was refreshingly direct. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear, he said, lowering himself into the water with less grace than Naya's species but with determined competence. On Earth, our deep-sea thermal vents host some of the most ancient and unusual life forms on the planet. The possibility of finding similar evolutionary pathways here is incredible. As Ryan submerged, Naya noticed something that made her pause. Through the clear water, she could see the outline of his body through his fitted wetsuit, and there was something unusual about his anatomy. As a marine biologist, she was well versed in the reproductive systems of countless aquatic species, but the human form seemed to have a peculiar asymmetry. They descended together toward the thermal vents, Ryan using his mechanical propulsion system while Naya moved with the fluid grace of her species. Her natural sonar abilities allowed her to map their surroundings while his advanced sensors provided detailed chemical and electromagnetic readings. Naya, Ryan's voice came through the underwater communication system. The readings here are incredible. The mineral content suggests these vents have been active for millennia, but the biological signatures are unlike anything in our databases. She swam closer to examine his sensor array, inadvertently brushing against him in the confined space near the thermal vent. The contact sent an unexpected sensation through her translucent skin, a warmth that had nothing to do with the mineral-rich water surrounding them. "Your equipment is remarkably sophisticated," she observed, trying to focus on the research rather than the odd flutter in her chest cavity. "The sensitivity of these sensors exceeds even our bioorganic detection systems." Ryan turned to face her, and in the confined space, their bodies were suddenly very close. Through her semi-transparent skin, Naya could see her circulatory system responding to his proximity with increased phosphorescence, a reaction she'd never experienced around members of her own species. "Naya," Ryan said, his voice softer through the communicator, "are you all right? Your skin is glowing brighter." She looked down at herself, embarrassed to realize that her body was literally lighting up in response to his presence. Among aquarians, such displays were intimate, usually reserved for mating rituals or deep emotional connections. "It's a physiological response," she managed, trying to move away but finding herself reluctant to break the contact between them. "Sometimes our bioluminescence reacts to unexpected stimuli." Ryan's eyes widened behind his mask, and she could see his pupils dilating even through the water. "Unexpected stimuli?" Before she could answer, a strong current from the thermal vent caught them both, pressing Ryan against her as they were swept toward a rocky outcropping. Naya instinctively wrapped her arms around him to prevent him from being injured against the sharp coral, and the full-body contact sent her bioluminescence into a cascade of colors that illuminated the entire area around them. Through the thin material of his wetsuit, she could feel every contour of his body, including the anatomical feature that had puzzled her earlier. The contact triggered an intense curiosity that was both scientific and undeniably personal. "Ryan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper through the communicator, "human anatomy is quite different from what I expected." He pulled back slightly, enough to meet her eyes, and she could see color rising in his cheeks even through the water. "Different how?" Her natural scientific curiosity warred with an unfamiliar shyness. "Your reproductive system, it's externally positioned, isn't it? And it seems to change in response to stimuli." Ryan's embarrassment was evident, but there was something else in his expression, a heat that matched the warmth she was feeling. Yes, that's accurate. Human males have external reproductive organs that respond to various triggers. Physical contact, emotional arousal, even just proximity to someone we're attracted to." The honesty in his admission sent another wave of bioluminescence through Naya's skin. "Attracted to?" "Naya," Ryan said, his hands finding her shoulders as they floated in the warm water near the thermal vent, "I hope I'm not misreading the situation, but your glow is incredible. And the way you've been looking at me, the way you move when we're working together. I find myself thinking about you even when we're not researching." Her heart rate accelerated, sending patterns of light racing through her translucent cardiovascular system. "Among my people, bioluminescent displays like this are intimate. I've never experienced such a strong reaction to another being before." "Never?" Ryan asked, moving closer again, his artificial breathing apparatus creating small streams of bubbles that tickled against her sensitive skin. "Never," she confirmed. "But then, I've never worked so closely with a human before. Your species is fascinating in ways I didn't expect." They were interrupted by an alert from Ryan's equipment indicating they'd spent too long at depth for safety, but neither moved immediately. The moment stretched between them, filled with possibilities and the strange new awareness of cross-species attraction. "We should surface," Ryan said reluctantly. "Yes," Naya agreed, but made no move to leave his embrace. Finally, practical concerns won out, and they began their ascent. But throughout the journey back to the research station, Naya found herself studying Ryan with new intensity. His efficient movements through the water, the way his equipment integrated with his natural abilities, and especially the glimpses of his unique anatomy through his wetsuit all combined to create a fascination that went far beyond scientific curiosity. Back at the station, as they were removing their gear in the shared equipment bay, Ryan paused in his movements. "Naya," he said, "would you be interested in continuing our cultural exchange? Maybe over dinner? I'd love to learn more about Aquarian customs, and I could share more about human biology." The way he said the last word sent another ripple of light through her skin. "I would like that very much. Though I should warn you, dining with an Aquarian can be quite different from human customs." "I'm counting on it," Ryan replied with a smile that made her bioluminescence flare again. As they arranged their equipment, Naya reflected on the day's discoveries. She'd expected to find new life forms in the thermal vents, but she hadn't anticipated discovering something far more personal, that attraction could transcend species boundaries, and that sometimes the most interesting research subjects were the ones working right beside you. The evening ahead promised discoveries of an entirely different nature, and for the first time in her scientific career, Naya found herself more excited about the personal research than the professional kind. Later that evening, in the station's dual-environment dining facility, Naya floated in the aquatic section while Ryan sat at the adjacent terrestrial table. The arrangement allowed them to share the meal while remaining comfortable in their respective elements. "This is remarkable," Ryan said, sampling the prepared kelp varieties Naya had recommended. "The flavor complexity is incredible. How do Aquarians typically court? I mean, how do they typically form relationships?" Naya's skin flickered with amusement. "Courtship among my people involves synchronized swimming, shared exploration of deep ocean trenches, and the gradual synchronization of bioluminescent patterns. When two Aquarians are truly compatible, their light displays begin to mirror each other." "And have you ever synchronized with anyone?" Ryan asked, his scientific curiosity clearly mingling with personal interest. "Never completely," Naya admitted. "Though I've noticed that my patterns have been quite active since you arrived. It's unprecedented." Ryan leaned forward, his eyes reflecting the gentle light from her skin. "Would you like to explore that phenomenon further?" "From a purely scientific perspective, of course." The way he said "scientific" made it clear he was thinking of anything but pure research, and Naya felt her entire being light up in response. "I believe," she said, allowing her voice to carry the full weight of her interest, "that such research would be mutually beneficial. After all, understanding human anatomy has become quite a personal priority." As the evening progressed, both researchers discovered that the most fascinating exchanges often happen not in laboratories, but in the quiet moments when two very different species found common ground in attraction, curiosity, and the universal language of connection. The medical bay of Stellar Station 7 hummed with quiet efficiency, its sterile white walls softened by holographic displays of peaceful landscapes from various worlds. Kira moved between her patients with fluid grace, her golden skin seeming to absorb and reflect the ambient light, creating a warm glow that many found comforting during treatment. As the station's chief empathic healer, she possessed the rare gift of her people, the ability to sense and manipulate the life force of other beings, accelerating healing through direct contact and emotional connection. The alert chimed through her neural implant just as she finished treating a Zephyrian trader's plasma burns. Emergency in Engineering Bay 3. Human engineer, severe electrical shock, immediate medical attention required. Kira had never treated a human before. The species was still relatively new to this sector, and their emotional complexity made them challenging for empathic healers. Human feelings were intense, chaotic, and often contradictory, unlike the more controlled emotional states of most galactic species. She gathered her medical kit and hurried toward the engineering section, her healing robes flowing behind her like liquid sunlight. She found him lying unconscious on the engineering deck, surrounded by sparking conduits and the acrid smell of burned circuitry. James Parker, according to the identification scanner, a systems engineer in his early 30s with strong features and calloused hands that spoke of someone who worked with both technology and manual labor. His brown hair was disheveled, and angry red burns marked his arms where the electrical discharge had found its path through his body. What happened? Kira asked the Rigelian engineer who had called for help. Power conduit overloaded while he was running diagnostics, the alien replied, his crystalline features reflecting anxiety. He took the full discharge before the safety systems could engage. He's been unconscious for several minutes. Kira knelt beside James, placing her hands just above his chest to begin her initial assessment. Her empathic abilities immediately encountered something unexpected. Even unconscious, his emotional landscape was incredibly complex, layered with determination, curiosity, and an underlying strength of character that impressed her. But there was something else, something her healing senses couldn't quite identify. I need to establish physical contact to begin the healing process, she announced, placing her palms against his chest. The moment her skin touched his, several things happened simultaneously. First, her healing abilities activated, sending warm golden energy through his body to repair the electrical damage to his nervous system and tissue. Second, her empathic senses were flooded with human emotions unlike anything she'd experienced before, complex, passionate, and strangely appealing in their intensity. And third, she became acutely aware of his anatomy in ways that her medical training hadn't prepared her for. Through her healing touch, she could sense every aspect of his physical form. His cardiovascular system was remarkably efficient, his muscle structure dense and well-developed, but it was his reproductive anatomy that caught her attention. The external positioning was unlike any species she'd encountered, and even in his unconscious state, her empathic contact seemed to be triggering physiological responses. James stirred beneath her touch, his eyes fluttering open to reveal deep blue irises that seemed to look directly into her soul. "Angel," he murmured, his voice rough from the electrical trauma. Kira's golden skin flushed deeper at the word. "I'm Kira, the station's healer. You've been injured, but you're going to be fine." As consciousness returned, James became aware of the warm sensation spreading through his body wherever her hands touched him. "That's incredible. I can actually feel the healing happening." Empathic healing requires emotional connection, Kira explained, though she was finding it difficult to maintain her professional composure. Her abilities were designed to form temporary bonds with patients to facilitate healing, but with James, the connection felt far more intense than it should. "I can sense your life force and guide it toward repair." What she didn't mention was that she could sense much more than that. Through their empathic link, she was experiencing echoes of his thoughts and feelings, including a growing awareness of her presence that was distinctly male and unmistakably human. Her healing abilities seemed to be amplified by his emotional responses, creating a feedback loop that was both professionally unprecedented and personally thrilling. "Your emotional patterns are quite unique," she said, moving her hands to heal the burns on his arms. Each point of contact sent new sensations through both of them. "Human feelings are much more intense than other species." James watched her work, his gaze following the play of golden light beneath her skin as her healing abilities flowed through him. "You're literally glowing," he observed with wonder. "And I can feel what you're feeling, can't I? Some kind of connection." Kira nodded, trying to maintain clinical detachment even as her empathic senses were overwhelmed by the intimate nature of their bond. Empathic healing creates temporary neural pathways. You might experience some of my emotions during the process. Then you can feel mine too, James said, and his emotional state shifted to something warmer, more personal. You can sense that I find you absolutely fascinating. The directness of human communication never ceased to surprise other species. Where most beings would dance around such feelings with cultural protocols and social subtleties, humans simply stated their thoughts with refreshing honesty. I can sense your appreciation, Kira admitted, her skin brightening as her own emotional response intensified their empathic connection. Though I should warn you that empathic bonds can create artificial feelings of attraction. What you're experiencing might not be entirely natural. James sat up slowly, testing his movements as the last of his injuries healed under her touch. What I'm feeling seems pretty natural to me. And unless your healing abilities include artificial memory implantation, I was attracted to you the moment I saw you kneeling over me." Through their lingering empathic connection, Kira could sense the truth in his words. But more than that, she could feel his curiosity about her, his genuine interest in understanding her abilities and her people. It was a refreshing change from the fear or reverence most species showed toward empathic healers. "Your healing abilities," James said, standing and offering her his hand, "they're incredible. How do they work exactly? Is it some kind of bioelectric manipulation?" Kira accepted his help up, noting that the physical contact still sent warm sensations through both of them even though the healing was complete. "It's more complex than that. We can sense and manipulate life force directly, but it requires emotional resonance with the patient. The stronger the connection, the more effective the healing." "And what kind of connection do we have?" James asked, his thumb brushing across her knuckles where their hands were still joined. Kira's empathic senses were still active, and she could feel his genuine interest, his attraction, and something else, a deep curiosity about her that went beyond the physical. "Stronger than any I've experienced with other species," she admitted. "Human emotions seem to amplify my abilities." "Is that why your skin is still glowing?" James asked with a smile that sent pleasant sensations through their empathic link. Looking down at herself, Kira realized he was right. Her golden skin was still radiating the warm light that indicated active healing abilities, but there was no medical reason for it to continue. Her body was responding to his presence, to their emotional connection, in ways that had nothing to do with his injuries. "That's unusual," she said, though she made no move to break the contact between them. "Maybe we should investigate this phenomenon further," James suggested, his engineering mind clearly intrigued by the puzzle they presented. "From a scientific standpoint, of course." The way he said "scientific" reminded Kira that human emotions were often layered with multiple meanings. Through their empathic connection, she could sense his desire to understand her abilities, his attraction to her personally, and his genuine curiosity about the possibility of relationships between their species. Such research would require extensive contact, she said, allowing her healing abilities to flow between them again, not for medical purposes but simply to maintain their connection. "I'm willing to make that sacrifice for science," James replied, and through their bond, she could feel his amusement at his own joke mixed with very serious interest in spending more time with her. As they left the engineering bay together, Kira reflected on the day's discoveries. She'd expected to heal electrical burns and send another patient on his way. Instead, she'd found someone whose emotions resonated with her healing abilities in unprecedented ways, amplifying her powers while creating a connection that felt both professionally fascinating and deeply personal. "Kira," James said as they reached the medical bay, "would you be interested in continuing this research over dinner? I'd love to learn more about empathic healing, and I have a feeling there's a lot more to discover about how our species interact." The way he said "interact" sent another wave of golden light through her skin, and she realized that her healing abilities were responding to more than just his injuries. They were responding to the potential for something much deeper. "I believe such research would be mutually beneficial," she replied, unconsciously echoing words that other couples across the galaxy had been saying with increasing frequency. After all, understanding human emotional patterns has become quite a priority. As they entered the medical bay, James paused at the threshold. "Kira, there's something I should probably mention about human anatomy. Since your healing abilities are so sensitive to physical contact, you should probably know that humans have some unique physiological responses to emotional and physical stimuli." Through their lingering empathic connection, she could sense his slight embarrassment mixed with anticipation. "I'm a healer, James. Anatomy doesn't surprise me." "This might," he said with a grin that sent warm sensations through their bond. "Human males have external reproductive organs that respond quite noticeably to attraction and physical contact. Your healing touch might have some unintended effects." Kira's skin flared brighter as she processed this information. "You mean your anatomy changes in response to emotional states?" "Among other things," James confirmed. And given how your empathic abilities seem to amplify everything between us, I thought you should be prepared. The implication sent a thrill through Kira that had nothing to do with her healing abilities and everything to do with the fascinating human standing before her. Perhaps, she said, her voice carrying new warmth, we should begin our research immediately. I find myself very curious about these physiological responses. As they moved deeper into the medical bay to begin their evening together, both healer and engineer realized they were about to discover things about cross-species attraction that no medical text or engineering manual had ever documented. The healing process, it seemed, was just the beginning. Epilogue, 5 years later. The private medical clinic on Paradise Station had become renowned throughout the sector for its innovative treatment methods. The success of empathic healing combined with human emotional resonance had revolutionized interspecies medical care, leading to healing centers staffed by mixed teams across multiple worlds. Kira stood in the garden behind their clinic, her golden skin glowing softly in the evening light as she watched James work on the expansion plans for their next facility. Her healing abilities had grown stronger over their years together, amplified by the deep emotional bond they developed. The new wing will be ready by next month, James said, looking up from his tablet. 3 more treatment bays, plus the research laboratory you wanted. Perfect timing, Kira replied, moving to sit beside him on the garden bench. We've had 12 more requests for training programs this week. It seems every major medical facility wants to understand how human-empath partnerships enhance healing. James smiled, pulling her close so that her healing warmth surrounded them both. Who would have thought that an electrical accident would lead to a medical revolution? I prefer to think of it as destiny, Kira said, her empathic senses still delighting in the complex tapestry of his emotions after all these years. After all, some discoveries are too important to leave to chance. Through their permanent empathic bond, a connection that had grown from temporary healing necessity to lifelong partnership, she could feel his love, his pride in their work together, and his continued fascination with the way their abilities complemented each other. Speaking of discoveries, James said, his emotional state shifting to something that made her skin brighten with anticipation, I have some news about our research project. Kira raised an eyebrow, sensing excitement and nervousness in his emotional pattern. What kind of research? The personal kind, he said, producing a small device from his pocket that glowed with the same golden light as her healing abilities. I've been working with the station's xenobiologists on something special. The device was clearly of human engineering but incorporated empathic energy patterns that resonated with her abilities. As she took it from him, it responded to her touch with warm pulses of light. James, what is this? It's a bonding resonator, he said, his emotions now radiating pure love and hope. It's designed to create a permanent empathic link between compatible species. Kira, will you marry me? The proposal sent such a surge of joy through her that the entire garden lit up with golden radiance. Through their existing bond, she could feel his nervous anticipation, his deep love, and his excitement about building a future together. Yes, she said, her healing abilities automatically reaching out to envelop him in warmth and light. Though I should warn you, permanent empathic bonding with a human might have some unique physiological effects. James laughed, the sound sending happy vibrations through their connection. After 5 years together, I'm counting on it. As they activated the bonding resonator together, their individual abilities merged into something greater than either could achieve alone. The golden light that surrounded them was visible from orbit, marking the moment when 2 very different species became something entirely new. Later, as news of their engagement spread through the medical community, messages of congratulations poured in from colleagues, patients, and friends across the galaxy. But the most meaningful came from an unexpected source, couples they'd never met but who seemed to understand exactly what they were experiencing. A security chief and diplomat from Harmony Station. A marine biologist and researcher from Aquatica Prime. And according to the messages, many others who had discovered that sometimes the most profound connections happen not between members of the same species, but between beings different enough to complement each other perfectly. The human capacity for love, it seemed, was just as unique and valuable as any other aspect of their fascinating anatomy. And for those lucky enough to experience it, that discovery was worth more than any treasure the galaxy had to offer.